Hello, and thank you for joining us today and giving us the opportunity to speak with you. We're very excited to have such a large group joining us. In fact, it looks like we have counselors from a lot of international schools as well as independent consultants from around the world joining us today. So that's great. We are international education consultants from Educated Abroad, and today we're going to discuss our new book titled Educated Abroad, Enrolling at Universities in Europe, and how it can be a helpful resource to support your students who are interested in studying at universities in Europe. Before we dive in, I'd like to point out that we will be recording this webinar, so we do have the mics muted and the video off for everyone joining us today. My camera will be off as well. At the end, we should have some time for a short question and answer session, so please feel free to add any questions you might have in the chat. When submitting a question, please do include your email address so that we can follow up with you to provide an answer if we do not get to all of the questions. Okay, with that said, let's get started. First, we should go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Jennifer, and I'm going to be presenting to you today, and Tara will moderate the question and answer portion at the end of the webinar. We've both been living in Europe for years and understand the unique challenges faced by expats and international students when trying to navigate the university landscape in Europe. With that in mind, we started Educated Abroad, and we wrote this book to share our expertise and experience and to provide a roadmap for parents, students, counselors, and consultants who are interested in learning more about enrolling at universities in Europe. Our services are meant to serve as a complement to your current university counseling offerings, not as competition. So we're here to help. And now that you know who we are, let us show you how we can do that. As I mentioned before, today we'll cover a few main topics related to enrolling at universities in Europe. These will include the benefits of studying in Europe, where to study in Europe, the basics of applying to universities in Europe, key considerations to keep in mind about how it works, and we will provide you with some useful takeaways and additional resources to help support students through the process. First, let's take a look at the many benefits of studying in Europe that you can discuss with your students if they're interested in looking at undergraduate programs in Europe. A study from the University of California at Merced found that students who study abroad are twice as likely to find employment after graduation. Studying in Europe also allows students to grow personally by seeing the world and increasing their independence. Students will enhance their academics by experiencing a new culture, by potentially learning a new language or gaining fluency in an additional language, and by gaining international experience that they can include on resumes and applications in the future. They will also expand their network for future opportunities by making connections both socially and professionally. Studying in Europe provides many opportunities and advantages in an increasingly competitive and global workplace, particularly with work placement and internships that are often an integral part of the undergraduate programs in Europe. The benefits of the experience and learning will last a lifetime. Next, we're going to discuss the Bologna process, which is a system that aims to enhance the comparability and compatibility of higher education systems and degrees throughout Europe. The goal is to ensure the competitiveness of the programs and employability of the students in order to allow for international mobility in our ever increasingly global workplace. One component of the Bologna process is the ECTS point system. ECTS stands for the European Credit Transfer System. This system uniformly designates a specific number of credits to different academic qualifications throughout Europe. For example, most bachelor's degrees throughout Europe are valued at 180 to 240 ECTS credits. These are transferable and recognized at universities across all member countries in the European higher education area. Therefore, by studying in Europe, students will receive a degree widely recognized throughout the world. Our book covers 16 countries in Europe, and all of these participate in the Bologna process. When you have students considering studying in Europe, one of the main questions students will face is, where should they go to study? As a school counselor or independent consultant, they might look to you for guidance. And it's helpful to have an idea of where programs are available in English. Our book is a great place to start because it focuses on countries throughout Europe that tend to be the most popular locations for international students. You can see a few of these listed on the signpost there on the slide. When looking for an undergraduate program in Europe that's taught in English, you may initially think of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, which makes sense since these are English-speaking countries. And they do have thousands of excellent programs to consider. However, there are also many undergraduate programs taught completely in English in countries where English is not the official language. As you can see in this map, there are undergraduate study options available throughout Europe that are taught completely in English. The darker the blue color, the more English taught programs there are available. You can actually find English taught programs in the Netherlands, Italy, France, Scandinavia, and Spain, just to name a few. When a student chooses to be educated in Europe, they will be part of an international community that includes students from around the world. There's something for everyone, and we would be happy to help you support them in finding the best program to suit their individual needs. There are 24 official languages recognized in the European Union, and as such, multilingualism is built into the EU's Charter of Fundamental Rights. The aim is to facilitate communication between countries, while at the same time protecting language diversity and learning. As a matter of fact, nearly 90% of Europeans study English as a second language during their secondary education, which makes English one of the most common languages throughout the EU. With that in mind, however, it's important that students realize that when studying an English taught program at a university where English is not the official language of the country, while their classes will be in English, everything else will be in the native language of the country, such as day-to-day life, like shopping at the grocery store, or things like dealing with the university registrar's office, or processing their student visa, for example. Now let's take a look at the basics of applying to universities in Europe. The unique challenges faced by families living abroad, or those considering sending their student abroad, can make navigating the landscape of European higher education seem overwhelming. That's where support from school counselors and independent consultants can really help. Our book is crafted with that in mind, a comprehensive resource tailored to empower and guide parents, students, counselors, and consultants alike. Applying to undergraduate programs at universities in Europe may be a very different process than that of a student's home country. So that is something to keep in mind, and here is what they and you will need to know. In Europe, you apply to a specific program, not the whole university. For the most part, when applying to study as an undergraduate in Europe, a student does not apply to a university in general, but rather to a specific undergraduate program or programs at that university. The undergraduate programs are similar to a declared major in the United States, for example. Knowing the area of study on which a student would like to focus is an essential first step when helping to guide and support them in researching universities and programs. It is very important to ask a student what they're interested in studying and what they plan to do with this degree. With the thousands of programs that are available throughout Europe, having this focus is an essential first step to building a best fit program list and being able to narrow it down. In Europe, the application process is strongly focused on academics. When applying to a program at a university in Europe, it's important to realize that eligibility for programs and acceptance into them is highly dependent on a student's academic profile, not their holistic profile. So what do we mean by this? Well, it means that extracurricular activities and outside interests are often not detailed on the application and do not influence acceptance to a program. However, one way to highlight this extracurricular information is to show it on a CV or resume, which is often a required component of the application process. While grades matter, The grade requirements amongst programs are very diverse, and there's a wide selection of programs available for all students at all levels of academic performance. So there really are programs for everyone. In addition, it's worth noting that universities in Europe do not track demonstrated interest or legacy status. If an essay or interview is required, students should reflect on why they want to attend a given institution and enroll in that particular program. How studying that subject will enhance both the institution and society in the future, as well as what they will do with the degree. Students should avoid detailing how free time is spent outside of academics unless it can be directly tied to the subject area and program of study. As with college applications everywhere, it's a process. The first step in the process is to explore the programs that are available and find programs that meet a student's needs. Again, remember that students are applying to a specific program, not the university in general. This step is for researching what and where students want to study. The next step is to focus and prepare so that the student can be competitive and have a profile that matches the requirements of the program or programs to which they would like to apply. Academic profile is the main consideration for the European undergraduate application process, and planning which classes you take throughout the final 3 years of secondary school is really important. The final step is to actually do it. Apply and decide where to go. Our book covers the specific timelines of the application cycle for each country and what is required in order to apply. Application cycles in Europe begin in the fall of the final year of secondary school, with many programs having rolling admissions and deadlines, which impact a student's chances of acceptance. So it's recommended to apply as early as possible. Now that we've covered the basics of applying to universities in Europe, let's take a look at the key considerations that need to be factored in when a student is applying in Europe. Much of the application process in Europe depends on the profile of the individual applicant, as well as the country and program of study. Since many factors affect a student's application, we often say it depends. That's where we at Educated Abroad can help. We realize that a school counseling office does not have unlimited hours to dedicate to each student and how their unique profile will affect the application process, timelines, and requirements for every program in Europe. Similarly, independent consultants outside of Europe may be well-versed in the way the process works in their country, but not have the bandwidth to learn about the process in multiple European countries, all while simultaneously balancing the demands of their clients' other applications. So Educated Abroad can provide that support and do the heavy lifting to customize the project management for a student's specific case with regard to the European university portion. As you could probably tell from the previous slide, when applying in Europe, everything depends on the country, university, program, and profile of the individual student. No two applicants are the same, which leads to a lot of variation in the application process. Therefore, there are a few key factors to consider when advising a student. The first consideration is to make sure that the student understands the higher education structure in the country or countries of interest. For example, how many years does an undergraduate program take to complete in that country? This will vary in different countries. Then it's important to understand the application methods and deadlines for the country. These vary from country to country, but they also vary from program to program within a given university. Many countries limit the number of programs to which a student can apply. This is the number of programs, not the number of universities. So multiple programs at one university will each count toward that limit. Next, it's important to make sure that the student is able to fulfill the admissions requirements. These requirements are considered the minimum. So if the minimum requirements are not met, it's best to find a different program for which that student does qualify, or encourage the student to take additional courses to meet the requirements prior to applying. Another consideration is the cost of tuition for the programs. Each country has its own tuition pricing, and this often varies even further with different tuition categories, such as local and international tuition fee status, for example. Sometimes this is based on the nationality on the student's passport. Sometimes it's based on the student's place and duration of residence, etc. It really depends on the rules for that country or university, as well as the student's individual profile. And finally, students must understand the visa requirements, if any, for their particular profile. Again, the nationality and residency of the student may affect their need for a visa or not needing one. Our book covers these topics for 16 countries throughout Europe, and each chapter of the book covers a different country in depth, providing both a detailed country-specific overview and a snapshot summary chart for easy reference. We mentioned that it depends, so now we'd like to cover a few examples of variation you might encounter when helping a student apply to universities in Europe. First, let's look at an example of variation in the higher education system. While England and Scotland are both part of the United Kingdom, there are slight differences in how the higher education system is structured in each country. In England, most programs are 3 years, but in Scotland, most programs are 4 years. In England, a typical program lasts 3 years because students enter directly into their specialized program of study. Whereas in Scotland, students follow a more broad-based curriculum the first year and then continue on to their more specialized courses in the final 3 years. However, keep in mind that a 3-year program in England may still extend to 4 years if a student chooses to do a year of study abroad or a year of work study for practical experience in the workplace. A second example is in the area of application methods, which vary greatly throughout Europe. For example, the Netherlands uses a central portal for all students to apply to all of the various programs across the country, with a limit of applying to 4 programs per student, all of which must be submitted through the central portal. In other countries, such as Italy and Austria, students apply directly to the school, so there is neither a central portal nor a limit to the number of programs to which a student can apply. There are even cases where a country or regional portal may exist, such as in Spain. But if a student is applying to a private Spanish university, they would apply directly to the school rather than through the portal. To be clear, when there's a limit to the number of programs a student can apply to in one country, it does not limit the student's eligibility to apply to other programs in other countries throughout Europe. So, using the example of the Netherlands, while a student can apply to a total of 4 programs within the Netherlands, beyond that, they're still eligible to apply to programs in other countries throughout Europe. Another example is with regard to timelines and requirements. Many programs in Scandinavian countries, such as Sweden, require final grades and a diploma before applying. This may require a student to take a gap year or apply for a second semester entry due to the timing of the application cycles, since a student's final grades and diploma may not be available before the application deadline in April. Comparatively, in the UK, students apply for some programs as early as October 15th of their final year of school using predicted grades or grades from the first semester of their final year of secondary school and are given a conditional offer of acceptance. The student's final grades at the end of the year will determine if they meet the conditions of the offer for admission. Okay, so let's just review some of the key takeaways that we've covered here today. It's important to remember that a student's individual profile is a key factor in determining the specifics of their European university application process for each program, and it will affect variations in tuition, need for visa, program eligibility, etc. Undergraduate degrees from European universities are well regarded and recognized worldwide. Remember that when considering options, students are applying to the specific program, not the university as a whole, and there may be limits to the number of programs to which they can apply in certain countries. Eligibility requirements, timelines, and application processes vary from country to country, university to university, and sometimes even program to program. Most importantly, if you need support for your school as a whole or for individual students, Educated Abroad can help, and we're happy to collaborate in whatever way best suits your needs. At Educated Abroad, we feel strongly that European universities have a lot to offer students, both those coming from within Europe and from abroad. Getting an undergraduate degree in Europe is a great option that provides an incredible experience and opens up a world of possibilities. If you're working with students who are interested in applying to universities in Europe, we can help. Throughout this webinar, we've mentioned our book, which serves as a great one-stop resource for all things related to searching, applying, and enrolling at European universities. If you're interested in getting a copy, you can scan the QR code on the slide or find it directly on the Amazon website in your country. There are various ways that our book can be used as a resource to help support students. First, it's a great book to have in your library or counseling office as a resource. There are some who provide a copy of the book to each of their students embarking on the university process so that they can have it at home as a personal resource material. This can benefit both the students and parents. If you're interested in making a bulk purchase to provide to your students, please reach out to us to make that happen. We're also available to do author visits, webinars, workshops, or info sessions. These are great to include as part of back to school night or university info sessions, and we're happy to participate with a table at any university fairs that you might host as well. Again, we're flexible and we're happy to work with you in whatever capacity we can to support your students. Okay, now that we've covered everything on our end, let's open it up to questions from the audience. Tara, what have we got?
Sure. We have a question. How could a collaboration work if my current clients are interested in European options?
Okay, and that's from an independent counselor, I assume?
It doesn't say.
Okay, since they're saying clients, I'm gonna think probably yes, but we're always happy to work with independent consultants and support their clients on the European portion of their journey. So since consultants are already very well versed in the nuances of how it works for the universities in their countries, we leave that part to them, and then we work to support their clients on the European portion of the process. So this can be something offered as an add-on by the consultant, or they could simply refer those clients to us to work on the European university portion. And many independent consultants also offer workshops and webinars for their clients. And we're always happy to collaborate to offer a workshop or a webinar that covers topics specific to European university applications and enrollment. So we're very flexible and open to suggestions on how we could collaborate. And if you're interested, please go ahead and reach out, and we'd love to do that. You know what, Tara, I just saw that there was a message that some people didn't get a chance to scan the QR code. So I'm just gonna put that slide back up while we continue with the questions. So do we have another question to cover?
Yes. How closely do you work with students, and what level of support is given to the students?
Well, first, that would depend on whether we'd be working through a school or with an independent consultant. If done with an independent consultant, the level of support would be guided by the individual student and their family according to their needs. When working school-wide with an entire school community, we find that webinars and workshops that can reach a wider audience are more effective and appropriate. And speaking about European university options at a university info night is one example of how we can help with that. Similarly, if there's a student at a school who needs a bit more one-on-one support with the process, the school can refer them to us, much like a school might have a great math department, but a student sometimes needs a tutor for a little extra support. We would essentially serve as that tutor for the European university process. And this goes back to what we mentioned at the beginning about wanting to complement the services that are offered, not to compete with them. Do we have time for one more? Or?
Yep. This is a question about the Common App. So can students apply through the Common App to European schools?
Oh, okay. While students can apply to a handful of European university programs via the Common App, it's definitely not the norm. And the vast majority of programs will have to be applied to either directly or through the country portals like the one in the Netherlands that we mentioned earlier. There also may be limitations to using the Common App if students are applying to multiple programs in the same European country. So I guess the answer is yes for some programs, and it depends for others. So I think with that, we're kind of running up against the clock here. So I think we'll wrap it up, and we really appreciate everyone having joined us today and hope that our book can serve as a valuable resource for your students and school communities. For more information on how we could provide support or opportunities to collaborate, please reach out to us at info@educatedabroad.com. If you did submit a question that we did not get to in the Q&A, as long as you included your email address, we'll follow up with you directly. And in the meantime, please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to stay up to date on what's new at Educated Abroad. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.